So this is week 2. Welcome. Apologies again for the delay. I'm not sure what happened with the IT stuff, but IT used to work to 6:15, and now they work to 5:30 apparently. I probably did get that email and just ignored it and didn't read it. But so any questions from last week? It was a pretty gentle start into using Revit. You're all back, so which is good. Has anyone downloaded it at home or? Yep, a couple of people successfully downloaded it at home. A couple of people, do they want me to run through how to download it at Tafe tonight if they want to use it at home, or download it or install it at home? So I have to reset my password, so I'll do that in a little bit after the break, probably tonight, because I can't remember my password. So if you guys just want to start a new project like we did last week, so we'll just use the architectural template and just go OK. That's sweet. So I'm just going to draw a wall here. So last week, having a look at that model, you would have panned around a few things, and so Revit does this really good thing, and I've already done it in here, where if you hover over something, you get a pre-selection, and down in the bottom left-hand corner in the status, you get what kind of wall or what element you're selecting. On all your computers, the same. It's going to be blue, the pre-select color, and then when you click it, it's going to be exactly the same blue.
We've got nothing.
I've just drawn a wall. So if you hover over that section marker that you've got there, it's blue, and then if you click on it, it's blue. So it's really hard. To me, it doesn't make sense to have them both the same color, because you want to see, if you're pre-selecting something, you want to see it as a different color, and if you're selecting something, I think it should be a different color. I'm a very visual person. I think probably most of us are if we're all drafters or interior designers. Don't really like reading a lot of stuff. So if you go into the options, go to File and then Options down the bottom right there. Graphics. If you go to Graphics, so this is where you can change things. There's not much in here you change really at this stage, except for the graphics. So if people are using CAD and like the black background, you can make it a black background. It inverts everything. I'm just so used to the white background now that I just stick with white, because you have to change this on every computer you jump onto. So I just gave up changing it on computers because I did start it with a black background many years ago now. So you can also change your pre-selection and selection colors. So I use magenta and green. Magenta is probably not a really good color actually, just on the last. So I want something that's sort of loud, but yellow is not a good color. And obviously white's not a good color, but magenta is a bad color because that's the color we use in a couple of weeks in sketch mode. So if it's a sketch mode, uses pink lines to draw the sketch, like footprint of a roof and things like that. So if you have pink and pink, you can't really tell if you selected it or not. It's just a bit of a warning. And then you can change the temporary dimension size, which I might not have gone through a bit last week at all about temporary dimensions, but they are dimensions that come up when you click on elements, and they're temporary. They just disappear. I've made mine 20 on the screen, so it's a little bit easier for you guys to read it. You can go, I think it's set at 8 as the standard. You can leave that as 8. I've made my work computer 20 because I'm so used to looking at it 20 now. I want it 20 everywhere. That's pretty much it for that one. So the other issue, or not so much an issue with Revit, it's a good thing actually. So Revit also prompts you to save every 30 minutes, and if you are working on a central and local model, synchronize with the central model every half an hour or 30 minutes. That probably means nothing to you guys, but if you're working on a large project such as NRAR, what you essentially have is you have a central model, and then everyone has a copy of that central model working on their computer. You make the changes to your local model, and then you synchronize that back with the central model to update the changes that you've made to the job. So you can have 5 people in the office working on one job, sort of thing. So it makes it quite efficient in working. Particularly, tend to only use it heaps when we had to get something out at a deadline, and it was like pull all resources and do it. Because we only did it like once every 6 to 8 months, it was a bit like, how do we do it again? But it can be done. It's good. So I tend to leave it at half an hour. You can set it to 15 minutes or 1 hour or never, or 2 or 4 hours. 30 minutes seems to be a good capture rate of changes, particularly if you're smashing it out and just working along. The issue with this is though, the maximum or the standard architectural project has a standard 20 backup files. So if I got, so see how here I've got the MSF ID 5014 exercise start project version 4, and then I've got .004.321. So the dot files are your backup files. So you don't tend to want to open those, and I think in fact if you do try and open them, apart from it being in a I thought it did tell you it was a backup. You sort of want to keep those aside, and if you need to go back to, if the file's gone corrupt or something like that, you can go back and grab that file and work with that file going forward. So the issue of, can everyone see the issue of having 20 backup files? No issue?
Is that right?
Yeah. So if you happen to be working for a business, I'm not generalizing here, but most of them don't want to spend money on upgrading their server space. You can go to Officeworks and get a 2 terabyte hard drive for less than $100 now. But that on a server is mega money for them to upgrade. So you want to sort of limit the backups. I think 5 was generally about a good point, which was probably about a day's sort of work back sort of thing. So we only have 1 backup at Metricon, just because our server space is tight. So 1's a bit annoying because it's only the last, so if you save now and then it goes corrupt, it's only what you were doing half an hour ago. And if you were missing something from 2 days ago and you only just noticed, you can go back to the backup and copy it into the new file and things like that. So 5 is the good one, a good medium. So when you go file, save as, you can change that there under the options and change it to 5. And then you'll only get 5, which I imagine is what I've done with this project here. It's only got 4 backups and the file I'm working on. So I guess that sort of starts your file management. It's quite important, file management, about keeping stuff not as lean, but don't chock up models with stuff that doesn't need to be in there, because otherwise, depending on your computer, it can slow your computer down and slow your work down. Particularly when you start doing the 3D sort of orbiting around the building and things like that, it can sort of get a bit jittery, and you get the Microsoft spinning wheel sort of thing. So I'm going to run through tonight our general drawing tools. So we're going to do a couple of exercises, but I thought I'd quickly run through some family stuff sort of thing. So there's sort of 3 types of families that come into Revit. And I'm a bit rusty on this because I haven't thought about it for a while. I think you have a system family. Where's it gone? So you have a component family, an in-place family, and a system family. So a component family is something like a door or a window that you would load into your project. And last week when we looked at the hotel, the people that we loaded in at the end, so they're a component family. The in-place families, I pretty much never ever use because it's modeling a family, so a component family essentially in the project and only in that project. So if you use it to model a rainwater tank, you can never take that rainwater tank out and use it in another project. How often would you draw rainwater tanks on projects? Fairly regularly. They're, particularly depending on where you're building, you might show them on the building. So I would tend to take the time and actually develop a family that you can use in any other project rather than just doing it quickly in a project. And then the last one is the system families. So the system families in Revit are a wall, a floor, and a roof are pretty much the ones that are there most often I should say. So they can't be taken between projects. So component families can go between any sort of project. So you can, if you remembered 3 years ago, I put this this gutter profile on this job. So I'm going to go back to that job and I want to put that on this job. I'm going to go back, I remember the job, which is generally the hardest thing. I'll go back there and grab it and put it in this new project. You can do that. Walls, you can't do that easily enough. So walls, so this double brick or double brick wall stays in this project. So if you are, let's say for example, working for a builder that has general construction, so brick veneer, or likes to do lightweight stuff, you would put all this stuff in your template before you start rolling out jobs with it, because then you don't have to duplicate it and create the wall construction every time you start a job. So that gives you massive efficiency and also removes the human error. Like, someone might think you do heaver with a 25mm batten. Some people might think you do heaver with a 40mm batten. If you guys decide, cool, I'm doing it with a 40mm batten right from the get-go, and every job's going to be consistent forever until you decide to change the way you do heaver or something like that. So system families are a bit annoying, but it does pay to take the time and get them set up correctly at the start of using Revit, because otherwise you'll find you have to keep making the construction of the roof or the walls or the floor every time you're in a project. And I don't know about you guys, but I find that really tedious and boring. I definitely couldn't have been an AutoCAD drafter. I probably would have found a different job. So they're families. So families are .rfa, and then Revit projects are .rvt, and then Revit templates are .rte. Is that covered in that? So that's pretty much families in a nutshell. Obviously, you can create your own families. The sky's the limit. I tend not to want to create too many families these days. I tend to try and find suppliers or specify suppliers that have BIM content. There's no point me in my Office A producing a door. Let's say this door over here. There's no point me in Office A producing that door, taking a day to make that family. Someone in Office B taking a day or 2 days to make that family, and someone in Office C taking a day to make that family. When you could find that family on the Corinthian website, potentially, I'm not saying they supply BIM content, I don't think they do. I'm much more. There's a link on it's quite an old content download that was supplied to Tafe by RedStack. So you've got A&L Windows here, you've got Braden Windows, you've got Capital, you've got Trend as well. You can get Millet appliances, Velux skylights as Revit stuff. Chrome is a really good website for BIM content. So this is the Chrome website here. So you can jump onto or the RFA part. So they also, if you're using SketchUp for anything, they've got SketchUp files. And then you can just select, let's go with a bath. It's an island bath. And you can just download the file there. They're a really good one. Dulux is a really good one as well. They actually have a plugin to Revit. Which you need to create an account for. And the plugin only works in the full version, but it literally has every Dulux color, which there's a lot, which I've discovered, available to put into Revit as a material. The other good one I found yesterday actually was Austral Bricks. Have a good BIM library. So you can download this and with their instructions apply pretty much any brick of their range to your project. The only issue with these guys, because they own Bridge Tile, is it as well? The Bridge Tile one is not so good. They haven't got the content yet, but I'm sure they'll work on it at some point. So don't get me wrong, you still may or want to create your own families for whatever reason, but I'm more of the opinion that someone's making them there for you free, you may as well use them. Even if you have to sign up and get emails, it's worth it. The Dulux one is free to sign up for, although I think you need an ABN. You probably could just use a Tafe's ABN if you don't have one. And you can also, if you don't want to put the plugin on your computer, you can also download the range or the palette as well. So that's really good. So we're going to jump into Revit now. So if you guys can start a new project with the architectural template. So one of the other things I'm going to show you as well is if you guys get stuck at home or after this course is finished, the Autodesk Help website is actually really handy and really useful. It has videos, it has an explanation of things, of how to do things as well and what things mean. So last week, you know how we went through this. So it's got what the Revit home bar does. And the good thing about this is it updates to each version. So because you guys are using 2019 and 2020's out, there's not too many changes to 2020 from 19 for the user interface, but they may move things or change things. So they'll rewrite this every year. So you don't have to remember it. You may be able to just reference back to it later. So that it does come up by hitting F1 on the keyboard. And they've got their project browser sort of thing there. So it's really helpful. Probably, I would almost say better than the Ascent book if you just need a refresher on how to do things, if you don't need a step-by-step guide the first time how to do something or where to look, sort of thing. So that's there. So the drawing tools. So if you guys just want to go under architecture and wall, so this brings you into the modify ribbon where most of the drawing tools come up. So we have the draw tools here. So we've got line, rectangle, polygon, circle, arc, whatever that radial arc thing is, spline, which is terrible. Spline in Revit is probably one of the worst tools in Revit. It's not very user friendly. You've got this green tool here with a line, so the green line with the cursor. Does anyone want to have a guess at what that might mean?
Move it.
So that's pick line. So if you've got a CAD file or you want to do something on that you've already got lines drawn for, you can use that tool. And then just want to have a guess what the face with a green box on it might be. Big face. Yep. Cool. So they're pretty much your standard drawing tool. So when you go architecture wall, it'll come up with a line 99 times out of 100. It'll generally just always revert back to that, even if you've gone into rectangle and then you've gone out of the tool and then come back to it. So the other tools that come up in Revit are sort of modifiers actually in 3 places. So there's modify, button, panel, and tab. So the modify button is probably what you guys are going to start using a heap of. So the first tool here is our align tool. So you can align 2 objects. The second tool here is our offset tool, so you can offset walls, roofs, or something like that. The third tool is our mirror pick axes. So mirror over, if you have a line and you want to flip a window over or something, you can just do that. With the pick axes, the mirror draw axes tool is you can draw your axes that you want to mirror on. So we're going to go through, the exercises we're going to go through are going to run through most of these tools. Does anyone have a guess what this big cursor is? Yep. And maybe the next one, one circle into 2?
Okay, cool.
Yep, cool. The circle with the arrow at the top? Any guess? Rotate. So it's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Like, probably the align one's probably the worst one. And then, what's this one with the corner? Might be similar to fillet in CAD. So it's trim. So trim slash extend a corner is the technical name of the tool. And then these 2 down here are pretty much the same tool, but they just allow you to do single or multiple elements. So you've got extend single or multiple elements there. Anyone have a guess what the red cross might be?
Get rid of it.
Yeah, delete. Does anyone have a guess what the thumbnail might do? Yep, so pinning objects means you can't delete it or move it. So for you, as you learn Revit, I suggest you might, if you get the outside dimensions right in a couple of exercises that we're going to do, you pin those walls in place just because you can move them by accident. And then once you get, 6 months down the track, you won't use the pin tool again because you work out it's actually worse or more harmful than good. It's like when you want to move something and you don't realize it's pinned and you go, oh, I can't wait. It's annoying. Does anyone have a guess what the thumbnail with the cross next to it might mean?
Unpin.
Unpin. Yep, so just unpin to pin. These 2 tools here, where you've got a blue wall or line with a red dotted line going through. So the first one is split line. So if you want to separate a wall into 2 different construction types, let's say you use the split line tool and that puts the line into the wall, and you can change it from brick veneer on one side to Hebel and brick veneer on the other of the split. And then the other one next to that is split with gap. I tend to use the split line way more than the split line with gap. And then the last two tools here, the one with the 4 boxes, so the black box and 3 blue ones, is the array tool. So you can, if you're doing layouts for furniture, let's say in an auditorium, and you have lots of chairs, you can use the array tool just to do the layout really quickly. So the last tool here is the scale tool. Scale tool is a little bit different in Revit to AutoCAD for those previous users. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. So the one awesome thing that Revit has in it is if you ever forget what a tool does, if you hover over the tool, it'll give you a description of what the tool is and the name, and generally the keyboard shortcut. And it'll also give you a little video on how to use the tool or what the tool does. So if you ever get stuck on, oh, which one does that again, just hover over it for a second before you hit the F1 button. And then if you remember the keyboard shortcuts I gave you last week, you can change them. So I changed my align keyboard shortcut to AA because I'm too lazy to go across the keyboard with one hand. Most of my keyboard shortcuts tend to be on the left-hand side of the keyboard and not the right-hand side, even if they're 3 letters. So if you guys just want to jump on to learn, and go to the Revit short exercises. So last week we had a look at the modern hotel final-M. So this week we're going to go through exercise 2A, B, and C. So if you guys just want to, if you guys want to close that project that I asked you to start because it's got a file to use. So we want to use the simple building.rvt file and open it and probably upgrade it because it's an old file. So if I just open that up, so you guys can chuck the PDF on your other screen. That's the beauty of having 2 screens. And also, as I mentioned last week, you can take views out of Revit now. So you can now grab that and take that the 3D view, let's say, out of Revit and put it on the other screen as well. I can't do that because I've only got the one. So I always suggest to new users, and I do it myself, when you're working on a project, and it's awesome that Autodesk have given us this function finally, I chuck this on my other screen just so I'm making changes in the floor plan. I can see it straight away in my 3D and make sure everything's good. Revit is a little bit difficult if you go too far down the garden path with an error. If you go too far down and you've made an error before, it's a little bit hard to fix. It's harder to fix than if you notice it straight away and rectify it. So I used to say always make sure you check a 3D view after you've finished doing something, but now you can check it as you're doing it. So it's awesome that they've put it in. So exercise 2A, wherever it's gone. So we're going to sketch a wall, some walls. So we're going to use the rectangle tool. I've already gone through steps 1, 2, and 3. If you guys just want to save this to your hard drive or your USB or to your desktop, it's not crucial that you need to have this for reference for future. It's just because you'll get asked to save it, and in half an hour, when we're doing a higher up task, you'll get asked to save it, and then if you haven't saved it to a location, it's just slows us up a little bit. So if we just save it now,
Can we save on the desktop?
Yep, just go File, Save, because it's the first time. So you guys want to save it to your desktop. So go File, Save. File, Save, and Project. That's okay, just save it to your downloads.
Yeah. I lost access to the online account. It's locked, it says. Can I do the same thing in the normal file?
Yes, you can. I'll print it up because you can't get to that. Oh,
Yeah, PDF. If you can just send me via email, would be good.
I might have a hard copy here.
Oh.
Doesn't flow very well.
Yeah.
It doesn't go like, it doesn't go to A, B, and C, so you just have to go through one. Did you manage to save it?
Yeah, save.
Yeah. Cool. Everyone managed to save it? Cool. So, we're going to go to the Architecture tab now. And we're going to click on Wall. So if you're not already at the Architecture tab, just click on the top bit where it says Architecture. And then click on the wall. So the other thing here as well is you'll notice, I think last week when we created those camera views, that you've got the drop down, which means there's generally more than one tool available. So there's a architectural wall and a structural wall. There's also a wall by face, which is more for massing. So I believe, has anyone heard of Autodesk Format? Basically their answer to SketchUp, where you can do massing and things like that. So you can get some cool sort of shapes out of it, and then you can put it into Revit, and then you can create your Revit project from that sort of conceptual stage. You can apply the walls to those faces of the mass that you create. I've never done it because when it shows you that picture, to me that just looks expensive. So there's not too many clients in Adelaide that have got that much money to have a nice curved feature wall. So I've never used it too much. You've also got wall sweep and wall reveal. Does anyone have a guess at what wall sweep might do? Or you can do with wall sweep? Like a wall sweep, so you can add coins or moldings to a job. Or anyone would have a guess what wall reveal might do? So wall reveal allows you to put cutouts in a job. So if you have some brick overhang or something like that, you can do it this way. Generally, I tend to use the wall sweep more because most people tend to have just moldings or something like that added to a job, not so much cutouts. Just know it's there. Obviously, because we haven't got any walls, it's not going to let us in the tool yet. And I think, will it do it if I go? There might not be any wall sweeps loaded in this project, so that's okay. So, back to the architecture tab and wall. I'm going to assume we're going to use this Blockwork 190 wall at the moment because it hasn't say select from the properties to do any other wall. We're going to come up here and use the rectangle tool. Now you want to draw anything in your project. So I can't remember if last week I said about these little circles on your sheet or your view and the little beaks. So they're your elevations. So if you can imagine, your elevation is pretty much this long and then this long sort of thing. So does anyone have a guess if I start drawing over here? What might happen? Yeah, so it'll show up in the south elevation and our west elevation, but probably won't show up in our east elevation, may show up in our north. So you want to draw as center to the elevation markers as possible. Just generally, because it makes life easier when you get to the back end of annotating and things like that, if it's sort of as close as center, so you don't have to fudge around with it as much. So if you guys want to draw a rectangle approximately 30.5 meters by 21.5 meters. So now you can see my temporary dimensions coming up. So notice how if I go right with the cursor at the moment, it's snapping to about every 100. If I go really carefully. If I zoom in a little bit, if I zoom in a lot, actually, we'll do it that way. See how it's starting to snap to every 20 of a dimension? So before you guys can do it, I'll just want to show you if I can remember where it is. So Revit has some predefined points at which it will snap at, depending on how close or far out you are. So the further out you are, it's going to snap to the higher numbers, and the closer you get into something will be the lower the number it snaps to. So it's set up to 1,000, 120, and 5. And then also the angles are set up to 90, 45, 15, 5, and 1. Pretty much just use the 90 or 45 angle most of the time. Not the 1 degree or 15 or 5 generally. So it's just so that you know it's there at the moment. So we want 30.5 meters across. So you can get pretty accurate. I wouldn't worry about, so mine's accurate across, but not down at the moment. So you can click on your temporary dimensions now and make them the actual dimensions. So this is one thing I find really good about Revit is the fact that you can sort of rough your walls and that in. So if you're ever doing a site measure and drawing up an existing house, you can grab the realestate.com floor plan, chuck the image in, trace around it, and then you can start working off the dimensions that you've got. So you've got a general knowledge of, the shape of the rooms, depending on how well the real estate floor plan is drawn. And then rather than going, I need to draw it this way, then this way, then this way, I don't work that way, sort of thing. So the other thing as well, if you've clicked out of the tool, but you've got your walls, don't fear. If you click on a wall, it'll come up with the temporary dimensions, and then, so it needs to be blue to be able to be edited. So mine's set up to 30.5 meters and 21.5. Now, as you can see, mine is not very centered to the drawing anymore with the way it's gone. So the same in AutoCAD. If you do a Windows select left to right, it will select only the stuff that you select entirely. And then if you do it right to left, anything that you touch will move be selected. Hasn't got the lovely thing if you hold down the mouse and you can loop around like AutoCAD has got at the moment.
Mine's building another wall over the top of it.
You're probably in the wall tool then, still. So if you escape out of it,
Oh yeah. Where am I supposed to
so if you do a Windows select of everything, and then you come up to the move tool,
move?
and if you just click anywhere in white space, you can move it down to about the center. And just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. Yep. So if you do the whole, if you select everything again, it'll generally come up with the modified tab straight away, and then move up on the modify panel. And then you click anywhere in white space, or you can zoom in and click on the corner. So the move tool literally, there's a couple of different uses obviously. You can click anywhere, or you can be precise and move it a meter or 1200. You can just type in that dimension. So if I just want to move this up and I want to change it 2 meters, I can type it in there. Now one of the other good things about Revit is if I just want to go to M and hit enter, M makes it meters, so you don't have to think what's 21 and a half meters in millimeters. Or more importantly, I was doing some topo work today. What's 101.5 in meters for a survey? I don't have to work out what that is in millimeters. I can just go 101.5 M and hit enter, and it'll convert it to millimeters straight away. So it's quite handy, particularly on these sort of big jobs, or these bigger designs and things like that we come up with. So we've been through the temporary dimensions there now. So hopefully when you click on, that's the other thing. So when you click on a wall, it'll show up what's perpendicular to that dimension, that wall. So if you want to get this dimension across, you need to select a vertical wall. If you want to get the dimension up and down, you need to select on a horizontal wall. So you can hit escape now if you haven't already to escape out of the tool. And we'll go on to step 8 or 9.
Where I can modify the height for it.
You can. We'll get to that a bit later. Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't say to do that. So if you guys just want to check your 3D, hopefully you've got something that resembles like this. Does anyone notice anything different apart from the design, obviously, to what was you were looking at the model last week with the hotel and the 8 levels or whatever it had, and the roof and the parapets? So something else they added to 2019 is the ability to see the levels in 3D. So if you open up a project pre-2019 that has 3D views created, they'll automatically be hidden. If you create a new project from a template that has 2019, you'll be able to see your levels in 3D straight away. One thing that Autodesk has tried to improve in the last couple of releases is, I'm going to try and think how I say this, not screwing your model up by updating it to the newest version. So I think from 2016 to 17, if you updated before they released the first hotfix, it messed all your annotation up. So you can imagine, if you're 90% of the way to getting a project to site, and they need to change slight little things, and you update it, and it changes all of your all your annotation and notes and all that stuff, you're going to be pretty annoyed. So they're trying to get back to, you can upgrade from previous versions to the next version, and it's not going to affect what you've done already. Unfortunately, things do slip through the cracks, but they do tend to fix it pretty quickly, sort of thing. So you can now see levels in 3D. Don't know how helpful it's going to be to most people. Probably end up hiding it. And this is probably the construction template, because it's got our top of slab, top of footing, bottom of footing, levels in it straight away. So if you guys just want to go back to your level 1 floor plan. So we're going to go back to the architecture tab now, and we're going to select on wall. And we just want to double check that we've got our line selected straight away. I know I said to you guys before that it will generally always revert back to line, but doesn't pay to check, or it does pay to check occasionally. So we're going to now draw a line across our model from the midpoint. So you notice how if I come up here, I get this square, purple square. That's a snap to the end. If I scroll through the middle and I get a triangle, that's snap to the midpoint. The keyboard shortcuts for those are also SE, which is snap end, and SM, which is snap middle. Not so much of an issue in this project, but just keep thinking that, because if you like here and you might go, I want to go SM there, it's going straight to the middle, which is good. Makes it a bit easier for you guys using it later. We just want to draw a wall across the middle of our project like this. And hit escape once. So notice I'm still in the wall tool, but I'm no longer drawing a chain, because you'll notice up in your options up here, it looks like I have chair selected, but it should say chain. And if I unselect that, it basically makes drawing walls a little bit laborious. I tend to never untick chain. I just hit escape. Yep.
Base offset, is that the level that you're drawing it at?
How
do you know? There's no point drawing it 3 meters above.
Where's it? Oh, so no. So, good question. We will get to drawing to levels and that in a bit. So, but to answer your question, so
I've used other 3D things before. If you don't have them set up from the beginning, you're drawing in plan view, it looks right, and then
yeah. That's sort of why I say always check with 3D, because when we get to drawing to 2-story houses or something like that, and the levels aren't right, it's easily noticeable. So this project has had it set it up correctly already. So has everyone got in their properties, if they select one of the walls, the base constraint is level 1 and the top constraint is level 2. And so you probably won't have that because you haven't got the file, but so basically what we're doing at the moment is if I open up the elevation, one of the elevations, is we're drawing between level 1 and level 2. So normally, and then base offset is if you want to draw a parapet and it's only a meter above that, you might use that. Say base offset, top offset a meter above what would be our ceiling level. So that's the offset sort of thing. So that's, yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. This is just, I guess, going through the basic drawing tools sort of thing. So I'll flick back to my level 1 floor plan and I'll just delete these random walls I drew. So now we want to go back into the architecture tool and wall if you haven't escaped out of it like I had. And now we want to draw another wall 2.5 meters above this wall. So this one you're going to use the temporary dimensions to draw. They can be a little bit tricky. So it's just a case of, I don't tend to use temporary dimensions too much actually these days. And then just coming across and clicking again. You'll notice that if you're clicking into a wall, if you click correctly somewhere, it may end the, I didn't tick chain again, that's why I did it, so ignore me. So now we should have something resembling a very big building that's separated into 2 big bits in a corridor. And now we're going to separate this building up into some more rooms. So again, go back architecture if you escaped out of the tool and wall. So we want this wall to be 5 meters off of the internal face of our top compartment, I guess. So Does anyone notice what might be the issue, or one of the other issues that come up when you're drawing walls? So in the properties, you also have the location line. So if I go through that again, so go wall, line, come in 5 meters. So it does say 5,000, doesn't it? If I draw my wall, which you probably guys have all done, if I select that wall now, it's 4893. So the line, so see how I've got my blue dot, my blue node, and it's in the center of the wall?
Oh,
If I change it to finish face exterior, it now goes to one side and it goes to finish face interior. So that's also quite an important thing to keep in mind, I should say, when you're drawing walls. So if I was drawing a site measure and drawing up an existing house, I would set all my walls to finish face interior because they're the interior dimensions. If you're drawing something from scratch, it's really up to you. It'd just probably be whatever you left it on last time you were using Revit, sort of thing. So keep in mind it's there, and for these walls where it's just literally one type of construction, it doesn't really matter. It's more when you get to like your brick veneer or you stud with something else that the location line becomes more important. The other thing as well, when you're on your walls, you've got these blue arrows, which does not mean anything in this drawing at the moment. So I'll just do this for you guys. So we'll get to here in a minute, but see how, so I've got some brick on the right side and the stud on the left side. And if I hit the arrow, it flicks it over to the other side now. The space bar also does the same thing. There's a few things in Revit that are like these arrows that no matter how much you zoom in, they do not get any bigger. You just need to trust me and know they're there. Equals is another one that comes up with the dimensions. Is it will change where it is, and you're like, where is it? I know it's there somewhere, and it's a bit of a pain trying to find it sometimes. When we get to levels, there's also another one there that as much as I zoom in, it doesn't get any bigger. I wish the Revit would release a training pack a training version, that would enlarge this stuff, so you guys can see it and trust me and know it's there. So I'm going to do that now. Now we're going to draw. Has everyone got that wall in there now? Yep, cool. So now we're going to draw a circle wall on our building. So back to architecture and wall. And we're going to, instead of using the line tool, we're going to use the circle tool. And we're going to come along our bottom wall of the corridor and hit the midpoint. So you can use SM there if you're getting finding it's a bit hard to get to the midpoint. And now we're going to type in 4200 for 4.2 meters. And hit modify, and that'll take us out of the drawing command, or hit escape twice. So now we're up to probably one of the best tricks you're going to learn, and you're going to end up finding that tab is your friend in Revit as well, just like escape is. So now we want to hover over one of our exterior walls. So I'm going to choose my top one. Now if everyone just wants to look at the screen now, so if I hit tab, notice how all of my exterior walls highlight, and then if I click, I get a pre-selection, I get a selection, and I've selected all my exterior walls. So this trick is a little bit difficult to grasp. I have some people holding down tab a lot and doing this and then trying to click, and it's not really working. So you just need to hover over and then hit tab once and then click with the mouse. So this can be really helpful if you want to change all the walls of a building. The tab button will also select Would help if there were more things in here. That's how you cycle through objects that might be on the same.
Quick.
Yeah. So it's just a hit tab and then click the mouse. Like, you'll end up loving it or hating it. So now, while we've got all our exterior walls selected, we want to change the wall type to basic wall exterior block on metal stud. So you come across to your properties browser, and there's two ways you can do this. So you can scroll up and try and find it in the project browser. If you know the name of the wall, you can start typing it in, and it'll filter it out to say, I've just put in EXT, so we want the block on metal stud, and I'll select that there. And then if you click back into empty space, that will unselect everything that you've already selected. And then you want to select your vertical wall, and then go into our properties and type selector. And we want to choose our interior partition style. I guess we'll just go with the 79mm one because it doesn't actually say. It says one of the small interior partition styles. We'll go 79.
This component not here on this one.
Isn't it?
It's not on there.
It's not in the book.
No,
Not in the PDF.
Not in the PDF. I probably should have your book and you should have this one.
You can take it.
Sorry guys, this obviously hasn't been updated, so
Yeah.
I'll grab you another one in a minute.
Yeah, this one.
Just make sure that's got the. Well, you guys can do it anyway. You don't need to read it. We'll just do it and follow mine, and you can just use that one for reference.
Sorry, this question, all this basic wall, the options is kind of based on the standard,
So
like the thickness or the.
yeah, I assume so. This would have been written for an American audience, so the construction in here is probably more metal. More American.
Okay.
Some of the Revit stuff is sort of set to Australian when you use the architectural template. So brick veneer is 250 in Revit. Most people in Australia build it to 240. Some people do it to 250. Depends on what the air gap is. So it does sort of get Australianised, but it could be Australianised a lot more or better, sort of thing. So if you guys just want to change that vertical wall to the interior partition style,
I'm not getting those styles. Like,
you won't have that, so don't worry about it.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Or you could change it to a 90 stud or something like that.
Yeah.
So probably what we'll do now is we'll just finish the task off. We'll add a door. That's on the PDF, isn't it? Cool. So we'll add a door into our project. And then we'll have a break. And then we'll come back and I'll show you guys quickly how to download, because an hour and a half or hour and 20 should be fine to download everyone in here. I hate to see Tafe's internet bill. So, to put a door into a project, you've got to go to the Architecture tab and Door. So Revit will always put in one door and one window into a project. Style. So it's generally this single flush door, and then a fixed window is all in every template sort of thing. So there's a couple of things here that you want to keep in mind when you're placing elements like doors and windows. Is up on our ribbon, down the very end, we have tag on placement. So if it's blue, means if you place a door in a project, it'll tag it, and if it's not blue, if you place a door in a project, it won't get tagged. Now they will always get the next. So in the properties, the mark is what the tag is. So it'll just go sequential. So door 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you happen to delete door 2 or 3 or 5, it will not go back and renumber that. I tend to just not worry about tagging anything until I'm pretty much done and I'm doing the dimensions, and that's like sort of the last things I do, because I like to have my numbers sequential, particularly for the first issue and things like that of a job. So I'll go from the front door, window 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If in the design process I've gone and deleted windows 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to have to go back and rename everything again. So I tend to just leave the tagging till the very last thing I do, or among the last things I do. I don't know how else other people work, but that's sort of what I do. So I don't worry about tagging now. But to put that door into the project where it wants it, we're going to use the temporary dimensions. So the other good thing about here, the space bar flips the door swing, if you ever want to know. So we're going to use the temporary dimensions to get our door in at 300 off of our wall. So I just go annotate and tag that quickly. So you notice that's door 3 because it's the third door I've put into the project. If you are deleting, if you have done one job and delete everything in that job and then start a new job in it, it's going to pick up from the last door number or window number you put in. So you could end up with window 141 being your first one in a job. So it's just a bit of a pain. That's why I don't tag straight away. And in all reality, in Australia, you're probably only showing the swing, the leaf size, not so much anything else about doors anyway, not the numbers or things like that. Unless you're working on a project like this, where that probably would have been 311A, 311B sort of thing, because this is room 311 sort of thing. So that's sort of where naming conventions and things come into it. So if we want to have a bit of a break there, so come back at about 20 to 8. So you guys just want to get up and have a stretch and grab a drink and go to the toilet. We'll continue on then. You should be able to. It's the full version. You can get an educational Enscape for 6 months, I think it was.
6 months.
But so we're going to jump into exercise 2B now. So we're going to use some more of these drawing tools to put stuff into our project. So we're going to copy, what are we going to do? So just ignore the fact that where it says to open up the simple building -1 -m Revit file. We've already got that on our screen. So now we're going to delete some walls though. So there's 2 ways to do this. Like you can just click on it and hit delete on the keyboard, or you can come up here, or you can click on it and hit delete up in the ribbon, or you can hit modify and delete. See what I mean about it, wanting to save when you do a higher up task? If I'd kept going with drawing walls and I was still on the tool, it wouldn't have asked me to save until you go to change tools. So you can hit delete, select the item, and then hit enter. It's really up to you on how you want to do it. I tend to find just hitting delete on the keyboard is probably the easiest. So now we're going to select our interior wall, and we're going to copy this. So you want to if you hold down Control, or if you select one element, we're going to select our door and our wall. So select one and then click and holding control and select the other. So it does a multi-select. We're going to come up to the ribbon. So we're going to look at some of the options when you get control or copy or align up here in the ribbon, up under the ribbon. So there's constraint, disjoin, which we'll get to later, but disjoin is a tool that's fraught with danger of messing up your model.
Sorry, where are you?
Copy. So you've done the multi-select of the door and the wall.
Yeah.
And then come up to copy. And you get the options.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the last one is you've got multiple. Yours might be down the bottom.
Up here.
Yeah, you copy.
Do I click on it? Yeah. Okay. Oh, constrain.
Is everyone's at the top?
Yeah.
Like these options up the top? Because there is an option to put it at the bottom. I don't know why you do that, but it's an option somewhere in Revit, and I don't.
There.
I know it's there. I just can never remember how to change it.
What you don't have?
Oh, select something. So select that wall.
See.
So just select. Come here, and then you haven't got a door in there, so we'll just use that one. Copy, and then you
Yeah,
get.
one more.
Cool. So, we're going to click the constrain, or make sure constrain is ticked, and we're also going to select multiple. Does anyone have a guess at why we might want to select multiple?
Copy 10.
So it continues a command and you can do
Yep.
multiple copies.
So this wall's going to we're going to make some offices in this building. So we're going to create multiple walls. So you could just do it once and then select it again and hit copy, and I sometimes do that if I'm a bit lazy and it's only 2 or 3 items. But if it's a couple, it's heaps easier just to make sure you change some options up here. So we're going to choose our pick point for this, or our starting point is going to be our top left-hand corner of our room. So if you guys just want to select that endpoint, and then we're going to come over to the right-hand wall on the right side and go to the outside of that wall. So we're sort of copying the same shape. And click it, and then you'll notice that we have another office, and you just need to repeat the process until you get to one that doesn't look like it's going to fit, or it wouldn't give you a big office. So 4 times. And then hit modify to escape out of the tool. So has everyone got that?
I don't have the
Can we?
multiple. Should be there.
So when you do it that way, you do the flex.
No, which one? No, there. That's
That one's terrible.
well, that's
No,
it comes up with multiple
That's why you do the select there until you got to press enter to make sure.
I don't get the. Yeah, so
听选
right.
选这个再选这个，我不是很清楚。你的门是在墙上。
So just one thing there as well that's just been brought to my attention that probably should tell you. So you're going to learn there's going to be more than one way to do things in here. So if you do a window select and select your wall and your door, and then come up to copy, it shouldn't put you straight into the tool, which it's going to. So it may not put you into the tool. You'll need to press enter when you do a Windows select, sometimes to go into the tool. Of course, it was doing it on what's name's computer at the back, but it's not wanting to do it on mine. So someone can vouch for me that it happens. To be honest, that quite often happens, and I can't replicate known issues on the screen. So if you select something, go to the tool, you may need to press enter to actually enter the tool with that selection. That's why I tend to select something I want to copy or move, then go into the tool, and it should select it straight away. So we've got our, 6 offices, except our last one doesn't have a door. Does anyone have a guess what tool we might use on the modifier? You guys, good, it's in front of you. So we're going to use a mirror pick axes tool. This is one I don't use very often, but it is helpful, I guess. So click on the door, click on mirror pick axes, and now you'll notice that up here you have the option to copy or not copy. Now, I tend to use the mirror draw axes tools a lot to mirror notes. If I want to flick it from one side to the other, I'll do it that way. But it's a little bit annoying having to press untick copy every time I go into that tool. A Windows shortcut to unselect that first tick box should be Control. I'm hitting Control on the keyboard, see how it's flickering off and on. Keep that in mind forever, because that is probably the most useful keyboard shortcut I've learned in the last 12 months. I use the draw mirror tool lots, and that saves, because if you draw, so I just, oops, that didn't put it into a door. So if I pick axes, puts the door in. If I want to flip the door back, so I want to do it here, but I want to put the door on the other side. I hold Control down, see how it flips it without having a duplicate. So you guys can have a bit of a play around with that. Just the mirror tool or draw axes. Probably try and just draw the axes vertical, because if the door has to be hosted by a wall. So you guys want to have a couple of minutes of playing around with that. I'll come around and help anyone that gets stuck.
When I mirror that, but that's a number is missing.
Yeah, you might need to tag it. I wouldn't worry about the numbers too much. We'll get to that.
The option was here for multiple.
Yeah. Oh, so you go modify. So select your wall. And hold down Control. Select your door. And then you're modify. Sorry. That one. Yep. And now you can just go. No, so you copy in the same room size. So you start here and finish there. That's the range.
My goodness.
Yep. Cool. And then you can keep going. Does that make sense? Don't worry about it. Again, don't worry about so much about the accuracy of this model. It's just to show you the tools. I'm not going to mark you down or mark you all for this model sort of thing. It's just to show you the tools and how to use them. So if it's slightly out or doesn't look exactly like mine, don't worry about it, as long as you understand the tools.
I'm not sure why it's doing this. I had like a wall and door here.
So if you hit enter, just hit escape.
Escape?
Yep. Cool. Now save again. Just select door.
Yeah.
And mirror draw it. Probably pick axes and then come in. And then come into your wall. Zoom in a bit. See how you get that 3-ax line.
You like it?
So I think if it does it once, it probably won't do it again. Like with the mirror tool, I don't think it does. It doesn't give you the option to do multiple.
Yeah.
So it just thinks you want to mirror one thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you couldn't do make it mirror.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Okay. So there's nothing wrong with this?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
It's okay.
So you click on, you think you go to there, then you go to
So does everyone sort of get the mirror tool?
Yeah. But you've copied it across the board, so you can make it all of this single axis. So you choose, say, the wall.
So that's the
Choose the wall. Sorry, you click across the board.
Yeah, so you probably go to the choose tool, choose what you want to mirror first.
Oh, you choose the choose the mirror.
Yeah, and then you go to mirror tool. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a few little set play changes you got to follow sometimes.
So if the syntax, you can normally pick the object,
then pick the wall.
Yeah, I tend to pick the object.
没有，他刚才我在那个 number 的时候，他是自己出来的。
I tend to go tool first and object.
Supposed to choose the tool.
So
不知道啊，
Choose the tool.
So control and click that one.
So does everyone sort of understand that?
And then go to yeah.
I'm choosing the object and then I'm choosing the plane
So we're going to move on to the next part of this now, which is we're going to be adding some reference planes to our model. Just a brief explanation of what reference planes do. So reference planes are non-principal lines in your drawing. So if you want to line up floors, you could draw that, a reference plane on your bottom ground floor, and it'll show on your second floor, and it won't print. I don't tend to use them very much because people tend to try and dimension to them, and then they might move or get deleted or not move. I try and dimension to as much model elements as possible, because then if it moves, my dimension should update at the same time and not sort of. I don't try and draw CAD in Revit, as where some people try and do that. So reference planes are a work plane. So your levels and things like that are a work plane as well. So they're available in the architecture tab. Down the very end, we have show reference planes or show planes, reference plane and viewer. We're just going to click on reference plane. So we want to draw a reference plane from the middle of our building where we started our circle down and try and come down at 90 degrees. You could probably draw it as far down as you want. So the other thing with reference planes is you can also assign a name to them. So that's more for family making. Families use reference planes a lot as well. Makes it parametric. So when you say I want the overall width to be 1200, it gets bigger and smaller sort of thing. And they use reference planes and names to control that. But for this exercise, we don't need to name it. We'll just ignore that at the moment. You may also notice that you have a little blue circle at the end of it, and it's got a little 3D. Again, that's probably something I'll show you through levels, but I wouldn't worry about that too much at the moment. I don't use reference planes a lot, so.
Do you use reference planes as grid, or grids are something you do differently?
There's a tool for grids,
Okay.
Which will be covered next week, probably. So, and then we're going to create another reference plane horizontally in our drawing. I've got no idea how they got the temporary dimension to work. This is the annoying thing I find about temporary dimensions. They're really good at the start of a project when there's not much information in there at all, or many walls or anything like that. Soon as it sort of starts to get a little bit too complex for the model, see, I can't get my reference plane to work horizontally, except for there for some reason. So we want 4, 5, 20 up or 6 meters down from our top wall. So I'm going to draw this wherever I can draw it, and then I'm going to select it and use the temporary dimensions to move it into place. So you want to select the reference plane, and change it to 6 meters. So just draw it anywhere, then click on it and change the line. So go forward. Go. I'll draw it again. Yep. And hit escape. Modify, and just come here, and then click in here. Yep, and put the 6 meters.
Where? Here?
So hit escape. Just click on the line. Yeah. And then you can change it to 6 meters. No, I don't think it will, because you need to install that on your computer. So I see if we can do. No. So if at home, if you try to download now, at home, have you got a laptop or anything? Yeah. So if you bring that in, you can do it on your laptop via the Tafe Wi-Fi. No, it should be fine. Use the same account. It just I'm not sure. So everyone's got their horizontal reference plane 6 meters down from the bottom. So I'm going to let you guys do this radial array by yourselves, following the book, and I'll come around and help you. I have used the radial array a whole lot of 0 times in my career, except at Tafe. So I'll come around and offer assistance now that we've got our reference planes in there. The desk should be in the project already. And the space bar rotates the object as well, or you can just place it in and then use the rotate tool. And the move tool as well. So if you want to just follow the...
So what is that thing, sorry?
That's the desk. So if you follow the PDF, so it goes there, put the desk in, and then you guys can do the radial array by yourselves, and I'll come around and help you then run through it at the end of it when it gets stuck. So if you use this again, you can then move it. Probably better to pick a point and yeah. So click on hit move, and then choose the corner. Yeah, and then move it across. You get the circle, so you need to, so that, put one in, just chuck it in. table. So I would just put it in there, and then you could modify and select it and move it. Oh, and then you can go to the access here. And that's here. So file and move. You can have the density and everything, right? And then yeah. Yeah. Physical walls. Oh. Yeah. So with the temporary meshes, you can so you can change them to different blocks and cycle through. But they're only temporary meshes anyway. So when we get to ready ranges and measurements, that's why I have to do that. Yeah. They're a little bit complicated at the start, and then once you start getting it, joinery and windows and doors, you can go into it and just swap tables over. I see. Like I'll occasionally use it to move the door open. Yeah, like yeah, and then sometimes they don't work. Like, they won't connect. Like you've got heaps of stuff on one slide. Yeah, and it depends on the fire rate. Very quick measure. So yeah. Yeah. That's the desk, isn't it? No, I haven't had any more because I just going up to the wall. Oh no, so it's so. Yeah. All those things construction. So you're saying your take for say your learn login is I can log in with the computer, but I can log in to learn. What's it called? She'll show me. Just not that I don't believe you, but so we go back to zero. And then go forward. So here. Oh. Oh, okay. Unless you went to get that. Unless you try to get something here, you go there. Yeah. No, you want to go to the board up there. Okay. Oh. Yeah.
So I've tried to do the array.
Yeah.
And it's just an array of itself.
Of itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's generally what I do.
Okay. Good.
Because
I've done it like 6 times because I'm doing everything it's saying, but it's not doing it.
yeah. So you have to start with the radio and group.
Radio.
Near the group associate.
Change that to 15.
Yeah.
That's unsettled already.
Yep. So see how it says floor is straight in the center of the rotation point, which is the no. Up to that. And think, yeah. I think that's the step that I always miss. Is not moving the.
Okay, that's good.
So I don't see why
It was just making this thing out of my.
yeah, look, I can count on one hand in 7 years of using Revit how many times I've used that on a job. Unless I've got a curved wall, which I move the desks around, which would probably be the worst thing ever.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't put the desks around the wall either.
Nah. So like, how's everyone going with this radial array? Sorry. Donut?
Me too.
Looks pretty cool. Okay. So I might run through it on the screen now that you've all. Can anyone see a use to the radial array?
symmetrical placement.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, what?
Like
In
if,
real life?
like in real life, what you'd use, like if you were drawing a job, what you'd use it for?
I've used it once when doing like arches and bits and
Yeah, but I guess you could if you had.
Doing
If you're doing keystones around an arch or something like that, maybe.
You're building a turret in a castle. The arches window.
Around a curved wall or something.
Yeah, maybe. They're pretty slim, like the recent times you use it, and you probably just rotate it because you've probably forgotten the tools there. So to run through that again is, so everyone's got their desk in the project and moved it over to the middle. So it now aligns. I'm just going to use the align tool, which I'll run through in a little bit. So radial array. So we come up to the array tool. Under the options, we go from linear to radial. We want to untick group and associate. We want to put in 15, wasn't it? We want 15 desks in here. And we want to make sure it is set to second. The field is set, moved 2 seconds. So now what we want to do is probably the step that I always forget. See this? So if I move my cursor around, the line follows the cursor, but it goes around this blue dot. So you have 2 options to moving your dot. You have, you can place it up here in the options. So see how now my blue dot's over here, or you can click and drag your dot to the top of our reference plane, and then you want to type in 360 up here, and that's how you get it. So I'll come around and help anyone that's stuck. Did you get that, Noah?
Yeah, there. Yeah.
You want to place the dot up there?
No. Just go.
Drag it up to the top. And now you want to
That's the second time. Thank you very much.
You're supposed to get that. You get that circle. You get the circle. No, you get the circle that's in the middle of that. In the middle, lower down. Make it bigger. In the middle of the desk.
No, you got to come up there. Yeah, there's a couple of things like that that you can't.
And then you drag that circle to the
You got to set it
center.
up there.
you can't adjust it.
You can adjust it, but it's got numerical threshold, so you can do it by numbers, or you can do it by
That circle. But you got to grab that and move it. Okay. Click on that circle. Move it up there. And then move it there.
Makes sense now. You said something last week about it, and I was like,
I told you. Yeah. Because otherwise what you're doing is spinning around that.
oh yeah, so grab the blue node, and come bring it up here. To the top. Yep. Yep. Now come over here and type 360. And enter. Oh, your number was, so go back, go forward. Yep, go back into the top. Yep. The number up here needs to be 15, mate. Yep. And then 360. And then enter. Yeah, the it does say drag the thing.
And now I would build mine with placing, because that's actually makes
Oh.
sense.
I tend to just click and drag because, yeah, like placing is okay, but you got to remember to go up there to place, and you got to remember it's there and all that. If you can click and drag it, it's just easier. So probably the only other place I would use the radial array is if I was doing a landscape plan and I had a feature tree and I wanted to hedge around it or something like that. That's probably the only other time, but most people don't have blocks big enough to have a nice feature tree and a hedge around it, so. No, true. Most people, well, most developers' blocks are pretty small these days, particularly in Mount Barker, where I would have thought you'd go to live on some land, not on a 500 square metre block. That's my personal view, though. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to place some columns. We can delete the desks that fall out of our office. I won't show you that this week. So we're going to place some columns in this project. So Revit has two different types of columns. It has an architectural column and a structural column. Basically, 99% of the time you're going to use a structural column. An architectural column, if the video will load, is basically some fancy fluff on the outside of a column. So a round column or something like that. I tend to not use architectural columns because you can't tag them, sort of thing. So they're a little bit annoying in that sense. So we're going to go through how to put a column in here, a structural column, and then an architectural column over that column. And then we're going to rotate the column and then array it to the end. But using the other, not place second, but place last, and then it'll space it individually depending on the number you want in it. So if you go back to, what are we doing? So you go back to architecture. So structure also has columns. They're the same column as architecture, just available in two places. And so this column wants to be about 2.5 meters off of our wall.
Is it the structural one we're doing?
Yep. Oh, actually, sorry, I use the LT version at work, so I've forgotten a vital step here, and I guarantee you, if you are modeling columns, you'll do exactly what I've done, and go and click and put one in, and it'll come up with this warning: none of the created elements are visible in the floor plan. Level 1 view. You may want to check the active view, its parameters and visibility settings, as well as any plan regions and their settings. So, basically what that says is if we go to a 3D, a column is in the project, except the way that columns get drawn by default are set up in the options. It's set to depth as the default. And I'm assuming it's because when I'm not a structural engineer or a structural drafter, is when they come in, they draw it from the floor plate above and then draw their structure underneath. That's the only reason I can think of why the default in Revit is depth, not height. So you need to change that to height for when we're drawing stuff. So I'm just going to delete the small one that I just changed. If anyone is going to be using LT, it doesn't have that issue. It just draws them up. That's why I forgot about it totally.
So where do you change it?
So up in the options, once you've clicked on column, you can click height, and we'll just say up to level 2 because that's our highest level. And then you can just use the temporary dimensions to roughly get it to 2.5, sort of in line with the wall. Again, it doesn't matter how accurate it is. And then we're going to place a architectural column over the top of that. We're going to choose the 457 by 475, which is actually 475 by 475. And you'll notice if you hover over the center of the column, it'll snap in the same spot to the center and center. And then if you just check a 3D view, hopefully you have something resembling this.
But I can't. That depth thing, I've missed that. Sorry. Column.
Yep.
Structure column.
Just hit escape. Again. Yeah, and go back to column. Yeah, okay. So the other thing as well that's different in here, it's what I thought it was. Thanks for the help. So in Revit, you can also do slanted columns. So you just want to make sure vertical column is selected, and that will allow you to have set the depth or the height.
Okay. And it was
25 or 2.5 meters off the wall. Again, this is not about accuracy tonight, it's just about putting stuff in the model. So everyone got a column like that.
Mine is not showing any height or anything. It's just there's an edge in here or whatever that is.
So just go back to architecture column. Yep. Height level 2. Yeah, that's fine. And then go column again, and architectural column, and come up here and just check the 457 by the top one. It's wrong, but it's a typo. Yep. And then just click on.
Just click on that.
I'm just making up. I think it's big for music color. I'm trying to get rid of it.
Just hit escape out of the tool. Then you can just select and delete it.
It's not working.
So every time you click when you're placing a column, you're going to place another column on the same place if it's on the same place. So if you just should just. So that's where you ended up.
Oh, so that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So.
It's not showing anything though. Is that normal? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So you got.
Oh, that's not there?
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be
When I
there.
change to the
Oh.
level
I'm not there. I'm still trying to.
Yep.
That is so
Just one
weird.
column.
No, so you want to check the height needs to go up to level 2. So if you set it to level 1 and you draw it on level 1, you're drawing nothing. That's why it's giving you that warning.
Okay, so I need to draw in level 2.
Yeah. No, so you need to, so it needs to go up to level 2. You can draw it in level 1.
Oh, up to level 2, so I can
Yeah,
draw
so
it.
you've basically taken the column up to the left. Excuse me. Yep. Yeah, yours will be fine because you haven't got the same levels as us, so you can still go back to the floor plan. Level 1, and then go back to architecture. Drop down the drop down in architecture. Yeah. And then if you click over that one. Yeah. Cool. So has everyone got their column in there?
It's not much right there.
So Yeah, it's because these walls are drawn 8 metres high,
Okay, and they're standard.
and the column is probably 4 metres or something.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It just looks out of proportion because
Yeah.
so see how that's up. That's 4 metres, that one. Your column is only 2.5.
Sorry.
Yeah. So there you get that. Cool. So we're going to quickly run through this array or rotate. We're going to rotate the column by 45 degrees just to get used to the rotate tool. So back on our floor plan. If you do a window select to get both your architectural column and your structural column, and then you can come up to the rotate tool. And this is a beauty, you can click anywhere. You don't need to click from 90 to 45. You can click at any degrees and type in 45 degrees, and it'll rotate at 45 degrees. So the rotate tool is pretty easy to use. Again, because you've already been exposed to the radial array and picking up that point, you can rotate, click and drag that. It will generally go to the center of the object that you're wanting to rotate. You can move it out as well if you want to. If you want to rotate something like that. So it's pretty easy. So you can also do that visually. So I'm just going to rotate my 90. So that makes sense? Rotate tool. Cool. So we're going to go through the, what do they call it? The linear array to last, I guess you'd call it. So we'll go back to our array tool, and last time we were in our radial array, we want to make sure we just check on our linear array at the top. And then you can probably tick group and associate or untick group and associate, which probably should already be unticked. And then we want to tick last. And we may as well tick constrain so we make sure we get it in a straight line. And then if you select the center of your columns, and we're going to place 10 in there, I think, as well, and come to the end. So now we have 10 equally spaced columns. The only issue, so when we've unticked group and associate, so I just run that through that again with the group and associate on. See how if the group and associate is ticked, you get a number. So I can change that to, I can change it to 10. I can get the 10 if I click on and change that to 8. I get 8 equal spacings. So if you're doing some design sort of stuff and trying to work out some nice spacings and things like that, having group and associate on can be helpful because you can quickly change it to equal spacings without having to grab the calculator out and go, what's 8 spacings of over whatever the distance is. So I'll let you have a bit of a play around with that. So you can try the group and associate method or the number. Yeah,
similar
these sort
style
of, yeah,
tools. Yeah,
similar, close, but
yeah, a bit different. You select things first and then run through. But
yeah, and like,
I'm sure there's plenty of other tools that aren't anything like this. But these are similar tools.
yeah, these ones, like, the next bit will probably make a start on it, we'll finish it next week. But the trim corner and things like that.
Well, I was going to ask you, I work in civil now, so bridges and elephants. For that kind of work, because the Revit was built to work in the I assume Revit's a different element with different tools. Yeah. So just not as technical questions.
No, so Revit used to come in 3-plate later today. Called it 3-plate, so it's architecture, structure, and everything.
No, I don't know.
And then it was one box, and it was all three on one. And they did away with that, so it's all three in one package now. That makes sense.
So he was running through this bridge structure.
Yeah.
You would use some of these smaller ones that we're using, but obviously, I assume you must draw the base and extrude it or something.
That sort of tape and fill would be
you would have to custom
model
that.
custom column.
Yeah.
But like if it was just like a straight, concrete circular column, like I was going to say like one that was next door, I don't have to fix it. You can model it like that.
And so some guru, I assume, on that project would create those bands from scratch.
Theoretically,
because a lot of stuff's custom, so they have to create all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that. I'm not really quite sure how.
It's not something you're going to be able to pull in from the website.
No, so yeah,
Okay.
probably yours
That's more
probably
weird
going to be a
than
little bit
mine.
different. It's going to be more custom, bespoke stuff that you're going to use.
Yeah.
You're not going to just find a shelf and stuff that will go from someone whatever. So yeah, no, I'd be interested to see some civil stuff at the moment
I
because
should talk to you guys about my mum getting such a like some of the road projects.
Like I've heard of it being done. I just can't quite grasp how or why. I fully understand the need for that sort of project, but just
Yeah, apparently doing all that.
just take this for example, like the bridges and all that stuff.
How do you get those radiuses that curve that way for the on ramps, but also
just like that.
roll down?
Some of the stuff I do, I pull my hair out. I couldn't imagine doing that.
I didn't want to.
Revit doesn't really like that sort of stuff, so.
Must have printing machines.
Oh yeah, they would. Yep.
Does that make that one?
So it's a group, so it's 2 items, and technically they're all the same group, so if you make a change, so, question just got asked about when you group objects in Revit. So, because I've done the group and the lineal array, it's grouped our architectural column and our structural column together. So one benefit of this is if I make a change, so to edit a group, you can either double click in it and you get taken to this yellow pasty space, which means you're just editing this group. So I change that from the 457 by 475 column to the 610 column and hit the tick to complete the editing of the group. See how it's changed all of my columns now, my architectural columns, to that 610 by 610. So it's handy in that sense. If you only want to change one of them, you do have to ungroup it and then change the single element that you want to change, sort of thing. So that grouping's handy, but it can also be a little bit of a hindrance, sort of thing. So,
Can you group items after you've drawn them
Yep.
singularly? Yeah.
Yep. So if you want to group items after you've drawn them, it's up on the create. If you select them, it's up on the create. It's this 2 items in an orange sort of sun. Create group. You can also name it the group and things like that. Please don't do what I do and just go okay and have group 1, 2, and 3 in my projects and then try and remember what they are. So it's fine because I'm the only one working on my projects. If someone else jumped into it, they'd be like, what the, and really confused. So what we might do is we might make a start on exercise 2C tonight now, which I just want to make sure is the same as yours. Which does look like it is. So basically 2C, it's going to take us through our trim tool, our line tool, our split tool, and offset tool. So hopefully we can get through it in about the next 20 minutes. It says here it's got an estimated time of completion of about 10 minutes. So hopefully we'll get through that tonight, and then we can start next week on setting up levels and some more drawing stuff that you'll need to know. So the first, probably like this week and next week, it's all about the tools, and then probably the last half of next week we'll start drawing an actual project using the tools again. So obviously this is what you need to use to draw your projects. So if we just go back to our offices. So up in the modify tab, we want to go into, if you can't, so the modify tab's available all the time. You may have noticed that when you click an element, it goes green. Generally means it just accesses the modify tab straight away. And then you might get some additional tools that are specific to that element that you've selected. So we're going to go to split element. We're not going to use split with gap. And we're going to split this corridor wall. Does anyone have a guess at why we might do that? Split it. So at the moment, if we were to trim to corner just one side of this side of the building, because that wall is one element, it would essentially not delete but remove this entire wall. So when you split the element, it splits into two elements, so you can trim corner both elements. So it makes more sense. Sorry. There's two ways to do this. So I would normally do it this way. So I'd come to trim corner and then just do it this way. So it's created a round bit in the interior. The other way, so the way that the book is saying to do it, which again I don't use it because I forget it's there most of the time, is to delete. So up in the options, delete inner segment, and then place two lines on our building or on that wall, either like slightly inside the circle. The reason I also don't tend to do it this way as well is because see how that's not a nice joint, like nice corner anymore. So I'd have to go into the trim extend to corner tool anyway to just tidy it up. So I'm going to show you the trim to corner or trim extend to corner tool now. So it's a two-click process. So see how I now get a blue dashed line in the middle? So generally you want to trim the outsides of your corner. So if I was to go in here and select here and here, see how I don't want a corner like that. So it's the two outs, like where you want your corner to extend to, I guess, is like that. So it's just a two-click process to get that to tidy up. Does that make sense? So The offset tool is pretty similar to CAD and probably similar to probably most offset tools in any drawing package. So up in you have the option to offset things by graphics. So graphics is select that, enter. So go offset, graphical. So graphics is just moving it by, site really, or you can do it numerically, and we're going to offset ours by 4,250. We're going to also verify that we have copy selected, and then it's just a case of selecting our exterior wall, and that's the offset tool. Again, pretty easy to use. So you know how before when we used the copy multiple and constrain, you could also use the offset tool for the walls if you didn't have the doors in the project yet. So if you wanted to make sure all your rooms were 4,250, you could use that to go across. So this wall that we've just created here, we want to change to our interior partition style. So I'm going to show you the quick and easy way to do this rather than going to the properties. So up in the modify ribbon under clipboard, you have paste, you have cut to clipboard, copy to clipboard, and you'll also have match type properties. So match type properties is pretty similar to, I think, Word, where you can copy and paste text sort of thing. So you want to select an item that you want to copy, and then you can paste it to anything else. So I could now select my outdoor wall, that wall, that wall, and change it. I use it a lot. It's really helpful. It's good to know it's there. The keyboard shortcut is MA. Sort of thing. So, or you could just select the element, and in the project browser, down the bottom you have the most recently used types of walls. So you can click on there and change it as well. So there's more than one way to do this stuff quickly. So has everyone got that? Something that looks like that? Oh, I missed a step here. So we just want to go back into the offset tool and change that to 3 meters. And we're going to offset that wall internally as well. So I'll run through this stuff again at the start of next session, because I realise it's 10 to 9 on a Thursday night as well. So we'll try and get most of this done tonight. So we're now going to use the trim / extend to element. We're going to use the multiple element because we want to move a couple of our vertical walls down to our horizontal wall that we just copied. So this is a 2 or 3 or multiple click process. So the first click places or selects the element that you want to extend or trim to. So in this instance, I'm going to choose the bottom line of our horizontal wall. And then I'm going to choose the walls that I want to, so it's it's the first one and then every second after that wall.
Yeah.
select what you want to keep, essentially. Is that how it is?
Yeah.
Not selecting what you want to trim out.
Yeah, you're selecting what you want to keep, not what you want to trim out. Yeah, that's probably the way to word it. Cool. So the second last tool we're going to go through again, which we've already been through, is the trim tool. So up on the Revit, it's the 2 lines with the corner and 2 arrows going to that corner. So we're going to trim this one. So this one is you want to select the bits you want to keep and trim it like that. So if I did it the other way and went that way, I would trim the corner the other way, like the wrong way. So you want to select the bits that you want to keep and trim to corner like that. So does that trim to corner tool make sense? You'll probably end up using it a lot. The trim/extend to element, I don't tend to use a lot. Probably more because I generally forget it's there. Because the user interface for Revit LT is slightly different to this as well. So it's more hidden, that tool. So the last tool we're going to use, which is probably the one that you will use a lot, and we'll use it a lot more in definitely the next couple of weeks, is the align tool. So the align tool is a 2-click process. The first click is where you want your second element to align to, and then the second click is the element that you want to move. So before we do that, we're going to move our reference plane up. So if you click on this reference plane we created for the radial array, and if you just grab that blue node at the end, this is one of the downsides of having size 20 text, is you've got to zoom in a bit more. And you just take that up out of the building. And then once you've done that, if you click the align tool, so you'll also notice you get a couple of options here. So you've got multiple alignments and the preference of wall center line. So you can change that to wall faces or faces of core or centers of core. So that pretty much 99 times out of 100 I'll choose wall faces. Sometimes I'll use wall center line. So we'll just leave it at wall center line tonight. So the first click is on our reference plane, because that's where we want to align this wall here to. So we click on that, and then if you zoom in a little bit, see how mine's selecting the wall center line. You can also hit tab, and that will cycle through the options for aligning. And then the second click is to align the element with the first selection. So that's probably where we'll leave it tonight, I think. So next week we'll quickly run over these tools again. I might save this Revit file up onto the Learn site so you guys can download it if you haven't got it already. For next week, so don't worry about saving yours if you haven't already. And yeah, try and enjoy your weekend and stay dry. I think it's going to be fairly miserable. Winter's here.
Should we save it?
You can if you've got you can save it to your hard drive.